The stage is set, the bright lights are on. Welcome along to Obviously Fight Talk episode 83, and I am joined, as always, by Mr. Robert Palin.
As always.
Noel O'Keefe as well. He never gives the praise back. This is episode 83, and it is brought to you proudly in association with MMAMix.com. They're obviously good because they're with Obviously Fight Talk. Fight Star Ireland, the fighter's choice, everything you need under two roofs, and www.feelsupreme.co.uk. Check them out for all your CBD oils, supplements. They look after the Chinese. They broke every record ever put under the sun. And hey, you want 10% off? I hear you. You want 10% off. At the checkout, use Fight Talk and you get 10% off. Rob, this has been an absolute barn burner of a show that we've set up this week. We are joined by Flow Combat journalist James Lynch, and we will be looking ahead to UFC 216. We're then joined, Rob, a man we've been trying to get for a while.
Been trying to get him. He's been teasing us.
Think of one of the most recognisable voices and faces and bulk. Size of the man.
I'm going to say, apart from the referee with the glorious beard, one of the probably the best, maybe the most well-known beards in MMA. I'd say, yeah.
Luke Thomas from MMA Fighting and MMA Beat and SiriusXM joins us. Delighted that Luke was with us. And then, hey, UFC 216 is down this week. Do you have any fighters on, lads? Yes, we do. We are joined by the Fire Kid, Tom Duquesnoy. Fight week, and the French superstar is joining, obviously, Fight Talk. It's an absolute jam-packed show, so let's not hesitate. Let's not wait any longer. Let's get into it, and let's look ahead to UFC 216 with James Lynch. Welcome back to Obviously Fight Talk, and if you're watching on YouTube you will see, and if you're listening on audio you're about to find out, we are now joined by MMA journalist James Lynch of Flow Combat. So James, thanks a million for coming on to Obviously Fight Talk.
Yeah, hey, glad to be on the show, guys. It's weird to see my big head in the background there, but I'll take it. It sounds good.
Looks good, man.
The reason why we have James on is we've been trying to get him on for a few weeks, looking ahead at cards, and why not this week? We have a great card in store with UFC 216 going down this weekend. Stack card. It's only a 4-fight main card, which surprised me, so we're going to be greedy and we're going to pick one fight from the undercard and go from there. So the reason why we will see when you listen to the rest of this episode, but we're going to start with the Fire Kid, Tom Duquesnoy, taking on Spartan Cody Stamman. So James, what do you think of this fight? It's two real up-and-comers in the UFC, two hotly touted prospects. Almost in a way it's disappointing they have to meet, considering both of them are hot prospects. But what do we think it is about?
I love it. I think it's sink or swim for both guys. Not that, if one of them loses, they're going to, be behind the eight ball, but it's just one of those fights where the winner's really going to propel themselves up. And one thing to note, I think a lot of people kind of forget that Cody Stamman actually took his debut at featherweight. So we're going to get to see him as a bantamweight fighter, which is very exciting to see him sort of put it all together. But Duquesnoy, in my opinion, has his hands full. Stamman's a really good guy. He's got the one loss. He's never been finished in his career. They actually both have 15-1 records. But no, I'm excited. Duquesnoy had a great UFC debut, but again, to fight a guy who's never been finished, I think he's got a tall order. But the fans are going to get a great fight in this one.
One thing I love about this fight is the kind of narrative that's going into it. You have Stamman, who's talking about Duquesnoy's credentials in Europe, and then you're going to have the clash of styles. The up-and-coming American, or the up-and-coming guy who came up in the American scene, and then the up-and-coming guy who came up in the European scene. So I love that kind of clash of styles. We're going to get, that matchup. It's a great fight. I think you spoke to Cody, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I spoke to him. I've actually known Cody for a while because he's fought, locally on a couple cards that I've covered. He fought for KOP, which is a Michigan-based card. Cody's from Michigan, so and they do events on Flow Combat. So, it's just natural to have him on the program or whatever. But this is definitely a big test for him. Cody has fought some solid competition on the come-up, but definitely not of the level of Duquesnoy.
And almost, this is good, we've got both angles covered. We spoke with Tom Duquesnoy when he successfully defended his belt against Alan Philpott in Dublin's 3 Arena, and I remember saying to Tom Duquesnoy that night, I said, there's 3 French people I love watching. One is Eric Cantona, he's a footballer if you don't get the reference. 2 was Paul Pogba, also a French footballer, and 3 was Tom Duquesnoy. This kid is an absolute killer. I've been lucky enough to see Tom fight in front of me on 3 occasions, and he certainly is this incredible prospect. So for me, this fight, something Cody said, he done his George St. Pierre, Matt Hughes, and he said he was not impressed with his debut. How could you not be impressed by Tom Duquesnoy's debut? The one thing that stood out, I think, in his debut, though, was he was getting hit in the first round, and I think that's something that Cody picked up on.
Yeah, he certainly did. And, also, there's some trash talk here. I mean, Cody, let's be honest, guys, nobody really knows much about Cody Stamman. I mean, he did fight on that UFC card, but if he wins this fight, this is going to propel his name up, because the guy that everyone wants to win is Duquesnoy. That's the big prospect, the big name. Cody's a great prospect, but he was not a guy that people were, raving about on the regional scene. And he has the opportunity now to sort of take away that thunder from Duquesnoy if he can get the win here on Saturday.
Do you think that they're matching Cody up with Duquesnoy to not give Duquesnoy a fight, but give him a favourable matchup? Because I see both as pretty good prospects, but do you think in the UFC's mind they're thinking, this is a favourable matchup for Duquesnoy?
I do, and I also feel that they probably weren't that happy with Cody's debut because it went to a decision. Now, Cody's not a huge finisher in his career, but I think this is in some ways going to force him to go out there and use his stand-up. So I think the UFC's when they make matchups like this, sometimes it's to light a fire under a guy, and I think that's exactly what they're doing with Stamman. If he's able to go get the win, and for Duquesnoy, people can say, hey, he just took out a top prospect, and that will fast track him towards a title shot.
What I like about Duquesnoy was touted for the UFC for a long time. He had contract negotiations and he held back. He said, no, I want to go. I want to get experience.
Dan Hardy. Remember Dan Hardy done that for a long time?
Yeah, it's he held back, wanted the experience. And what he's done now, he trains under the Man of Shadow in France, but he's now moved to Jackson's Wink. And you can see a whole new wrinkle to the game. Like the fight Tom Duquesnoy had in Birmingham against Shea Walsh. I don't know if you've seen that finish, but it was
I haven't. But I'm sure it's one of those ones I'll definitely be checking out before the fight. Yeah,
it's stunning. But this is a crazy exciting fight. So again, it's something we always say in the show. You mightn't be familiar with both of their names, but these are 2, as their records speak, both 15-1. 2 very, very talented young fighters, and it's a good way.
I'll push you for a prediction.
Oh, well, I'm going to go Duquesnoy. I love Duquesnoy. I've interviewed the guy. I like him. I've watched him fight so many occasions.
I think it comes down to as well. Like Duquesnoy is extremely talented, but we also have to consider the fact that we don't know a whole lot about Cody. And I think that we know a lot about Duquesnoy. We know what he does good. That's going to allow us to choose Duquesnoy over Cody a bit more because we don't know too much. So I'm going to go with Duquesnoy as well. I'm going to say a finish just because he basically finishes everybody. But we'll push you for a prediction as well.
Sure, I'll go Duquesnoy as well. Bias aside, because I've interviewed Cody a bunch of times, I just think his striking and the fact that I think he's a little bit faster. Now, here's the thing, though, guys. If Stamman's able to neutralize that stand-up with his wrestling, he's a very good wrestler. He's very good at kind of controlling the fight. Then I think Duquesnoy's in trouble, but I do see Duquesnoy edging it out. I don't know if he'll get a finish, but he might get a decision in this one against Cody.
He has been, in fairness to Duquesnoy, he has been pushed. That Philpott fight stands out for me, where he was really pushed, or the Brendan Loughnane fight.
Yeah, Brendan Loughnane.
And he still got the decision. Then the opening card, or the opening fight on the main card, is Beneil Dariush taking on Evan Dunham. Dariush coming off a defeat, taking on Dunham, who is on, I think it's a 4 fight win streak. 4 fight win streak.
4 fight win streak.
Wow. He's having a bit of a resurgence, isn't he, Evan Dunham?
Yes. Yeah, he's a bit of a dark horse in that division. 4 straight wins. The thing we forget about Dunham is just he hasn't fought. I think he's had just the one fight since 2016. In between now and then, injuries, rescheduling, things like that. So we sort of forget about him, and he's one of the old OG guys. He's been in the UFC forever. So it's a tough test for Beneil Dariush. Again, another kind of disappointing prospect at this point, because Dariush is 2-2 in his last 4 fights. Granted, he's fought some pretty tough guys, but still, he's going to have his work cut out for him. And Evan Dunham, who's just really good at smothering guys and really sort of neutralizing them from their weapons. Yeah,
Dunham at one point was probably one of the best prospects at lightweight. A couple of years ago, he was one of the better. He was like a real next generation lightweight. He was a really, really good fighter, and he ran into some really tough guys. I thought the Sean Shirk one was a bit controversial. He lost that decision, and if he won that one, I think he was probably maybe top 4, top 5, and he probably would have gotten into the discussion there. But this is a tough fight. I do like Evan Dunham as well. I like the run that he's on, but it should be an exciting one because I really like the way Evan Dunham fights.
What I think with Beneil here, and even Evan Dunham to a certain extent, the lightweight division, they're sort of the top tier of fighters. Once you hit like rank 8, 7, 6, 5, it's literally killer's row. It really is. You could be fighting the 8th guy, or you could be fighting the 3rd guy, and there's not that much of a difference. As in, they are like, for me, I think this is the hardest division in the UFC.
They're interchangeable. You don't really know who is top 5. Really, you could really put the top 10. You can mix them around, and you have a whole lot of good guys there. I
just think in this one, I know you're going to push me for prediction here as well, is Evan Dunham he's hard-nosed in a way as well. He's gritty, he grinds out performances, and like you said, he's a throwback to the old style MMA fighter as well. He's as tough as nails, and I just think he'll have too much for Dariush, and he'll get the victory, possibly by late stoppage.
Yeah, I can see that as well. I'm picking Dunham in this one. I just think at this point, Dariush has too many question marks with him. You know, sometimes he'll have a good performance and then he'll kind of follow it up with a dud. I think this is a bad matchup for him against Evan Dunham.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I do like Dariush. His jiu-jitsu was amazing. His striking can be very good at times, and sometimes it's not. So as you said, he's kind of hot and cold. So I'm going to go with Dunham, especially because of the streak. Confidence is huge in MMA. So I'll go with Evan Dunham. I'm going to say decision. I'll say it's going to be a good, hard-fought decision. Maybe like 2 rounds to 1, something like that.
Nice, good competitive fight. Right?
Yeah, good competitive fight.
Next fight on the card is in the heavyweight division. It's your number 2 ranked Fabricio Verdum taking on number 6 ranked, the Black Beast, Derek Lewis. Lewis coming off a defeat though. Lewis looked like he was on an absolute tear, and he looked like he was on his way to getting a title shot. He ran into Mark Hunt, and he looked dead on his feet by the time he literally, that gas tank was emptied a round ago, and Hunt got the finish. Taking on Fabricio Verdum, the former champion, looking to get back there again. Was in the news this week for a little bit of a standoff, but he too was coming off a defeat to Alistair Overeem. What way do we see this one playing out, gentlemen?
I think it's there's a lot of interesting variables going into this one. You know, Verdum's getting older. I mean, he's in his close to his 40s at this point. So at some point he's going to have to slow down. I thought the fight with Overeem was pretty close. I don't think it was necessarily like a clear-cut win for Overeem. It wasn't something it wasn't the type of performance. Let's put it this way, that would get Overeem a title shot immediately. I mean, Dana White kind of downplayed the performance of Overeem, and then you've got Lewis, who in all accounts was looking great, and then he just he ended up getting caught by Mark Hunt. Kind of got retired. Let's not forget about that. And then he decided to come back. The other thing I kind of wonder about this fight, Lewis was affected by Hurricane Harvey, and he talked about how he had helped upwards of 100 people, with the hurricane. Did that impact his training? I wonder that myself. But I think at the end of the day, you just look at this on paper. If Verdum's going to be the same Verdum we've seen in years, I think he wins this fight. He's got a lot more tools to finish. He's got good stand-up, good ground game. I mean, a lot of guys are not going to beat Fabricio Verdum, and I think Derek Lewis is in that category.
Yeah, I think the Black Beast's last outing kind of, maybe it kind of sours your thoughts of Derek Lewis, but it kind of makes you think now that he's a guy who, if you drag him into deep waters, he's not going to last. I think the retirement is a good point. I don't like when guys retire, and then he didn't really give a good explanation of why he came back, and he's historically had some really bad back problems, which if anybody knows what a back problem feels like or what it's going to affect in your career, you do. Yeah. It's not good. So that's a problem as well. Verdum, one of the best fighters in the world still, I think. His stand-up has come leaps and bounds over the years. His jiu-jitsu is amazing. I think if it gets onto the ground, if Verdum's on his back, maybe Lewis can land something, but still, that's dangerous. We've seen with Fedor, we've seen with so many guys. So I have to pick Verdum just based on skill sets. Derek Lewis is a big puncher. We can't forget that, and he has a puncher's chance.
Like, if you look, I give him more than a puncher's chance.
No, way more. Yeah, more than a puncher's chance, but he does have that in his back pocket.
I think, like what you said, I think Verdum almost fell into the Ronda Rousey trap of, I've knocked somebody out, I'm an elite striker, and he came charging at Stipe Miocic, and like Stipe was like, oh, happy birthday to me, and finished the fight. So if he plays that game again with Derek Lewis, it's night, and it's an early night. Verdum, interesting point what you're saying with Derek Lewis, we're helping people. How much will what happened during the week with Tony Ferguson affect Verdum? Because he's now getting, he's getting the gay community coming on, giving out for the slurs that he was saying. Some people are saying it wasn't homophobic, what he was saying. Never mind if it was, if it wasn't, in the politics of it. Is that going to affect his mind coming into the fight? Is that something that's an unwarranted or unwanted distraction leading into fight week?
I don't think so. Only because he's had these type of comments. The people getting upset with him for a while. You just look at the work that Kareem Zidane's got a bloody elbow talking about Kadyrov, and Kadyrov's a guy who funds Fabricio Werdum. So I'm sure anytime you look on Werdum's Instagram, you see people sort of talking about that. So I think it's run of the mill. I mean, who knows if he even runs his own social media? So I think for him, he's a veteran in this sport. I don't think that stuff will bother him.
Yeah, I agree. He's too experienced. He's way too experienced for that to affect him.
So by both of you, I think you both sound like you're going Verdum.
Yes.
I'm gonna throw spanners in the work. I'm gonna go Derek Lewis. Just by being
Derek Lewis.
Being Derek Lewis, getting him involved in a scrap and landing that big KO and that's I don't know. Like I said to you before we started, I said I have a feeling Derek Lewis is going to absolutely destroy Verdum. But then when you are talking, I'm like, oh god damn, that makes sense. Yeah, but no, I just think Verdum is coming back. He just wants to get on the mic to troll Travis Brown some more about Ronda Rousey. Let's be honest, that's why he came back from retirement. But I'm going to go with the Black Beast, and I'm going to go with a finish. He's going to knock out Fabricio Werdum and retire. Both of them will retire possibly after this one.
Jesus, some big
statements. Go big or go home. The co-main event of the evening was meant to go down at UFC 215. It didn't, but the 3 days is going down at 216. We have got, in my opinion, the pound for pound best fighter on the planet, Demetrious Johnson, defending his belt, chasing history against Ray Borg. What a fight. Co-main. What's your thoughts?
I don't see how Ray Borg wins this fight. No offense to him, he's a great fighter, but let's just hope he actually makes the fight. I know this time around he's not even hiring a nutritionist. He's sort of just gonna what is he doing differently that's gonna prevent him from getting sick or having weight cut issues? So that alone, if there's any guy fighting Demetrious Johnson, you can't have any doubt whatsoever. And we already have some even going into this fight. And you just look at the run Johnson's on. We forget about it. Johnson's the only guy to knock out Joseph Benavidez. He's the only guy to submit Wilson Hayes. He's the only guy to finish Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo, look at the performance he put on recently, and here's a guy who lost quite convincingly to Demetrious Johnson. So I just don't see anyone on Johnson's level at this point, and I just don't see him losing the title anytime soon. And I think he's going to break the record here on Saturday.
Yeah, I have to agree. We probably spoke about this fight for around 20 minutes the last time this happened. Unfortunately, we had to cut it completely from the episode because by the time it was released, the fight was gone. But what we were talking about, and it's probably we actually put it up in a separate thing. Basically, what we said is just Demetrious Johnson is way too good everywhere. Ray Borg has a chance because he is a very good fighter, but Demetrious Johnson, he honestly is. He's revolutionising a lot of the positions that you see. We spoke about this as well last time with Brendan Dorman. Like some of the stuff that you see Demetrious Johnson doing, you just don't see other people doing because it's the transitions, it's the techniques within the transitions that he excels at, and that's what he's so good at. So I just don't see really any way Ray Borg, without catching maybe a sneaky submission here or landing a big shot there, it's hard to go with him. It's hard to pick him based on their resumes, based on their skill set. So unfortunately, I can't pick Ray Borg. I think Demetrious Johnson's going to beat the record. What he does next is up to him. I don't know. I'd still like to see the Dillashaw fight, maybe at 135, but I don't know.
If Dillashaw is a champion, you know my thoughts on this. Yeah. For me, we done a breakdown during the week, James, of the best fights in October to look ahead for the top 5 fights, and this made number 2. And the reason is as similar to what you said when you were discussing the fight. Is I can predict Demetrious Johnson's going to win this fight. So for me, that's why this ended at number 2.
This could go blow up right in your face.
It could go terrible. Yeah. But how I phrased it was, if you were told you had to gamble your rent money or your mortgage money on this fight, who would you pick? You'd pick Johnson every time. Yeah. And that's the reason why this, for me, was number 2 in our list. Ray Borg is an incredible fighter, but the problem with Ray Borg is he has 2 wins in a row. So that means in this division, that gets you a title shot against Demetrious Johnson. Demetrious Johnson is the matrix of the flyweight division. This guy, when you're putting the puzzle together, he's already finished it, took it apart and put it back together without the picture facing him. He just has the answer to everything. I had said that on the same show, the Must Watch Fight show, I said that Demetrious Johnson is like an incredible artist. When he's here and with us, he's not appreciated. It's only when he's finished and retired we will look back and go, my God, how good was Demetrious Johnson. Rob has said it, his transitions from striking to takedown, it's not telegraphed. There's
no seams in it. There's no, like, you don't, I think what I said
last time. What's a hole in his game?
Yeah, like what I said last time is you watch some guys fight, especially like in the heavyweight division, or, you know, guys who aren't great, and you say, why isn't he shooting for a takedown? Why isn't he throwing leg kicks? And you never think that with Demetrious Johnson because he's doing it all so well. You're not looking for him to do any particular technique. He's free fighting in the purest form, and that's what he is doing. He's completely free fighting. It's what MMA was supposed to be. It's mixing the transitions, mixing the arts together, and it is beautiful to watch. I don't understand people who don't like Demetrious Johnson. Like it's their opinion, fair enough, but I just don't get it. I don't get why people like we had guys commenting on that thing saying that he shouldn't even be on the list. That fight shouldn't be on the list because Demetrious Johnson is too small and he's not good to watch.
I just for me, I've said this a few times. When Demetrious is fighting, the worst thing the UFC do is they put Dan Miragliotta as the referee, because Dan Miragliotta I'm 6'4" and I look small beside Dan Miragliotta. So when Dan's in there, it looks like he's bringing the kids for a school run when he has the two of them facing off to each other. Big Dan standing there towering over them. So please don't put Dan in. Who's the little referee? I keep saying, who's the little guy? Put him in. But I just think, honestly, Demetrious Johnson, one thing I will say, it's the whole thing as well. I remember, I keep mentioning Ronda Rousey today, but when Ronda was tearing, everybody was like, no one will ever beat Ronda Rousey. Yeah. Nobody will ever beat her. And then she gets beat, and nobody will ever pick Ronda Rousey in a fight again. So it's like, until the puzzle is solved, you're only unbeatable. Does Ray Borg have the answers? I don't think so.
I wonder what the postponement of the fight as well affects him. We spoke about it with Verdum. It's not the same thing, but he's so experienced that he's used to this. But maybe Ray Borg, all the hate that he's getting now, you pulled out, you got sick, why didn't you fight? Maybe that will affect him. Who knows? He has a great camp. Greg Jackson will guide him there. But you never know. He's not that experienced in MMA just yet. He has a couple of fights, so could be an interesting one. But I'm going with DJ.
I presume we're all going DJ, are we?
DJ, yeah.
Does he get the finish or does it go 5 rounds?
I think he gets a finish. He every time you think that he might go the decision, he gets it done. And I think again with what's going on with Borg at this point, I just think Johnson's just vastly superior. And I think he gets it done maybe by submission. We'll say that. Like
I think a good fight out of all the fights that DJ's had, I think Horiguchi is a good comparison for this fight with Borg. Yeah. And if you look at DJ, like a second to go in the 5th round, he got the armbar. So that's how good this guy. The fight was wrapped up. He had won 5 rounds to 0, and he still went for the finish. Appreciate the genius that is Demetrious Johnson. That list we were talking about, James, about the number 1 fight of October. It's the main event of 2016 of UFC 216. Tony Ferguson taking on Kevin Lee. We picked this as number 1. We got a little bit of heat to why we picked it. The reason being, I'll tell it before I get your opinion, is because unlike the Demetrious Johnson-Ray Borg fight, if I told you had to gamble your rent or your mortgage, you'd be undecided who you're picking. Because this is just an all type of crazy brawl. This has the potential to be such an explosive bout. But never mind what I think. What do you think of the fight?
Well, first off, let me say that I've seen a lot of people say Kevin Lee didn't deserve the shot. I completely disagree. I think, talking your way into a fight and also winning 4 straight fights by stoppage definitely has earned that. Just the way the division's, shaken out. I mean, you could say Edson Barbosa, but he fought Ferguson, 2 years ago. Yeah. I mean, for me, this is a fresh matchup, and, Lee's done a great job at selling this fight already. You look at half the videos on YouTube, it's Kevin Lee quotes, He's the one who's really sort of pushing this thing. You're right. I mean, the reason this is the main event is, aside from the Kevin Lee factor of him being outspoken, is also the fact it's very competitive. We don't really know how good Kevin Lee is. He's only 25 years old. We haven't seen the prime of him yet at this point. Tony Ferguson, he hasn't lost since I think 2012. I mean, he's been on some crazy winning streak as well. So there's so many variables going into this fight. The one other thing I kind of look at in this one is, Lee's kind of had some, not controversy, but just some things where you kind of say, is he really that good? Or is it just the fact that, he's kind of had some luck? Like you look at the Trinaldo fight, he didn't look so hot leading up to the finish. He did get it done, but I mean, he was having some trouble early on. He was getting tagged in the Chiesa fight. Of course, the controversy with the early stoppage top. But it's really tough to say where Kevin Lee is exactly as far as his skill set. But we're going to find out. But I think Tony Ferguson, you just look at the guys he's fought, everything else. I mean, he does have the inactivity. I mean, he's had injuries, and he's had, obviously Khabib not being able to fight. He hasn't fought in a while. So you look at those things as well, as that can affect things. But I think overall, if you look at this fight on paper, Tony Ferguson should win this fight. He's just a more dynamic fighter. And I don't know how you prepare for Tony Ferguson, because he's so unlike all the other lightweight fighters.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, it's Tony Ferguson. I don't think he's able to have a boring fight. I just don't see it. Even if the fight's going boring and he's winning a close decision, he'd probably start throwing like spinning back elbows and stuff just to make it exciting. He's an amazing fighter to watch, and he's so talented. He's crazy talented. And what I like about Tony Ferguson is when he had problems in certain fights, like if you go back to the Danny Castillo fight. I was going to say Garcia. Jesus, that's boxing. He had some problems on the ground where he was being taken down. Now, I actually scored at the Tony Ferguson that fight, but he was having problems where he was being kept down. He was trying to get to his feet. He was trying to pull submissions, and he's fixed that. And it's the same thing. He's had problems with Lando Venata. He got into that crazy brawl, and I think he's fixed that. We've seen some improvements as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he has fixed and what he's improved coming up to here. Same with Kevin Lee. As you said, we don't really know how good Kevin Lee is. He could be the best fighter in the world. You never know. He's run into some tough guys, but he's beat them. You had the weird kind of choke, non-choke thing, but
it was a choke.
It was a choke. It was a choke. But it's just a great fight, and I can't wait for it. That's the reason why I had him number one as well.
Like me with this fight, what I said about Ferguson, like you said it there as well, James. He's unpredictable. The man can't even pick up weights correctly. he can't even tweet. He puts a capital letter on every word on a tweet. Like, that takes effort. And that's what Tony Ferguson does. He's odd, but in a great way. Do you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't approach
speaks weird.
He doesn't approach things the way you're meant to. Just look at Twitter. The capital letter on every word. It takes time. But what he brings is this wild unpredictability. Like, when you look at that Lando Venata, and this is in the same way for Kevin Lee, this is the glimmer of hope. The light at the end of the tunnel is that Lando Venata fight, because Venata had Ferguson hurt in that fight and was throwing crazy shots. Ferguson adjusted and got the victory in the end. But that's the fight that Kevin Lee can go, right, if I do go wild and we get in brawl, because Ferguson, the one thing about Ferguson is he has an ego. When he's in there, he wants to beat you up. He wants to say, I'm the man and you're in my house. And that's something that Kevin Lee, if he can drag him into that type of fight, that's where he can take full advantage. What I like about Kevin Lee is the same way, if you look at Nate Diaz wasn't really in the picture to ever fight Conor McGregor. Then he gets on the mic and he says, Conor McGregor, you stole everything I worked for, motherfucker. And that got Nate the fight 100%. And now you look at it, the big talk is Nate Conor 3. And that's what Kevin Lee has done. And even I thought, like, what Kevin Lee said in the lead up to this is the real title fight. McGregor's only fought a lightweight once and he's left. He's in a different sport. This is the real fight. And that's brilliant PR and brilliant promotion by Kevin Lee of himself. Can he back it up against probably, I think, the number one guy anyway in the lightweight division is Tony Ferguson? I just think this has that sense of unpredictability, and that's why for us it was number one on the list. But for me, that's why I'm talking with this eagerness of this fight.
And also, and quickly, we got to talk about the ramifications here. I mean, if Lee wins, UFC might have a superstar in their hands here. He's 25 years old, African-American guy. I mean, this is the type of push that that division needs when Conor's not around right now. Because, I mean, right now, it's the Conor McGregor, on pause, right? I mean, the division right now is this fight. So I think, the hardcore fans, they want Tony to win. He's sort of like a cult hero, kind of like a Diaz brother. But let's be honest here, what is going to get people interested in MMA outside the UFC is Kevin Lee. And I think that's what the UFC has to be banking on. And that's probably also why they gave him the shot, because if he does win, he will be a very outspoken champion. And that's kind of what they need right now for their champions. How
important is it, the post-fight interview after this, whoever wins, I think especially Kevin Lee, just because the way he talks, how important is it to make a statement to Conor? Because during the week, Conor mentioned this fight. He specifically mentioned this fight. He said he's watching. And Conor doesn't mention things, just out of the blue. He plans everything that he says. He knows what he's saying. So he planned to say that he's putting the spotlight in this fight because he knows if you have options, and he says it all the time, if you have options, he has the option of Nate Diaz. And now if the winner comes out of this with a big win and makes a statement and gets on the mic, it's going to interest him and it's going to build a big fight. So how important is the post-fight interview? As weird as that sounds, like it's a weird question. How big is that post-fight interview?
It's huge. It sells itself. I mean, you talked about the Diaz post-fight interview. How many times have we seen that clip?
Yeah.
And how many times have we see that leading up to both McGregor fights with Nate Diaz? I mean, that is an iconic clip. I mean, if you look back at MMA history, that's going to be, right there in the Mount Rushmore is that clip of, Nate Diaz calling out McGregor. And I think Lee's got to do the same thing. And guys, I mean, if look at it this way, I mean, just, imagine this. And again, I'll tell you my pick in a second, but if Kevin Lee goes out there and finishes Tony Ferguson in the first round and gets on the mic, how excited would you be for McGregor Kevin Lee fight? I mean, that has potential to be a huge pay-per-view for the UFC.
Yeah. Eddie Alvarez, I think it was, said that if Lee does get Conor will absolutely crush him before they get into the cage with the mind games. It's an interesting point.
Possible. But, saying that, I mean, how many times do you forget that Kevin Lee's 25 years old? I mean, he's a guy who talks like he's in his 30s. He's very mature. And, even though he does say a lot of things, he's a guy that, I don't know, it's just very mature for his age. So I think it's something to consider as well. But you're right. I mean, he doesn't have that experience of, having high profile. I mean, this is the biggest fight of his career if you look at it.
Do any other fights just we normally do an under the
pick.
Oh,
Jesus,
sorry,
trying to get away.
Trying to get away.
Jesus, this guy.
Come back to me,
James.
I got to go Ferguson in this one. I just think if we're looking at this on paper, I think that Ferguson, tough guy to finish, tough guy to submit, tough guy to knock out. I got to go him. But if Kevin Lee goes out there and knocks him out, would not shock me because this guy, like I said, we have not seen the best Kevin Lee yet.
Yeah, I agree. I think when I'm making a prediction, you have to base it on previous fights, and when you don't see anything specific there that you can choose to get the winner over the line, you have to go with the guy who's looked a little bit more impressive, had the tougher fights, and I'm going to go with Tony Ferguson to get a win.
I'm going to go with Kevin Lee. And the reason being is because, the way Tony the way he comes in and he does all his madness, I think Kevin Lee will get a read on it. I just do, and he'll almost land a short shot, like something short that'll rock Ferguson, and he'll finish him.
It's happened before.
I don't know. I just like Lee. I think maybe I'm dreaming of a McGregor Lee fight. I just think, like you said, James, I think Lee would be great for the division, but so is Tony Ferguson. Yeah. Same thing. I expect Tony Ferguson to win. If this is the best way to say it.
Sitting on the fence, this guy.
No, I'd expect Ferguson to win, but you know what? I'm going to go with the home run, and I'm going to say Kevin Lee will land that big shot, and that'll be a surprise. Could be early, could be the first round, and catch him cold and stun him and get the finish. So I'll go back to the point before Rob rudely interrupted me. We normally go one under the radar. What fight on the undercard from Fight Pass down? What fight stands out for you as in a must-see TV fight?
Well, we've been talking about him a lot already on here, and that's Lando Venata. He's fighting Bobby Green. Bobby Green, has not looked the same since he's had, the injuries and layoffs and everything else. And Venata, upset in his last fight. A lot of people were expecting him to go out there and get the winner against Tamar, but he didn't get it done. He had all that momentum from the Ferguson fight, even though he lost, and then he followed that up with the knockout over McDessie. Is he going to be able to recapture that? I mean, he's got to go out there and beat Bobby Green, and I think he can. I'm picking Lando Venata in this fight, but Bobby Green is a guy who's surprised before. He's had a couple close fights, and he's again just been very inactive. So these guys both like to stand and trade. I'm going Venata and Green as the dark horse pick for fight of the night.
Yeah, that's such a good fight. If you're calling Lando Venata groovy Lando Venata, you call Bobby Green kind of groovy Bobby Green, because he has a similar kind of style, and not in the terms of the kicks and all, but like his boxing's kind of similar. He's kind of groovy. Great fight. I'm gonna go with I'm gonna pick Godbear versus Harris. Did I take your pick?
No, go on.
I like the heavyweights. It could end early. We had Godbear on the show. Super nice guy. So I'm gonna go with Godbear and Harris.
Yeah, I like Godbear there with power. Like, he's on the show with us here, but I just think it's a big opportunity for Godbear to make a statement for UK MMA as well. I'm going to go with Brad Tavares. I always like Brad Tavares. He's on a bit of a slump. Has been. He looked like he was getting there. Yeah. Tell us, ladies. I think that's a good fight. And again, it's so low down the card. But that's UFC 216. What was their thoughts on it? The picks, the fights. Agree with us or disagree with us? I've gone on some crazy ones, but I honestly think this is a fight card that it hasn't got the hype it almost deserves. It's a
good card.
Yeah, it's a great card. It's a solid card from opening to close. Yeah. And potentially you get to see history go down on Saturday night.
Yes, sir.
So, James, thanks a million for coming on to obviously Fight Talk. Enjoy the fights.
Yeah, I will. Thanks so much for having me on. It was a pleasure. I'd love to do this again. And your listeners can follow me on Twitter at Lynch on Sports. That's where you can find out all my interviews, all my work, and all that. And thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Check out his YouTube page, because you're probably the most active interviewer in MMA I've ever seen. Like an interview every day almost.
Well, for video especially.
Yeah.
I don't think people do as many videos in interviews as I do. But that's the name of the game, man. You gotta try and be different. So that's my shtick, is the video interviews. Like you guys, great channel as well. I always check out the stuff.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. And an Ultimate Pro. I didn't even have to say where can people catch you. The Ultimate Pro. So yeah, James, thanks again, my man, and enjoy the fights on Saturday night, and talk again soon.
Yeah, anytime, guys.
Cheers.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
my man.
Cheers, man.
There we are. UFC 216 goes down on Saturday night. It's one hell of a stacked card. Our picks are a little off. Noel's gone crazy, hasn't he? Noel's picking the outsiders, Lewis and Lee. I don't know.
Noel El Kakui.
Yeah, a little bit of madness. Embrace.
But like they're not,
Embrace the madness.
yeah, but they're not
Me read it now.
they're not the most. They'll catch you. No, they know it's you. They're not the craziest picks. Like I don't think.
No.
Like I don't think Kevin Lee is the biggest underdog in the world.
Yeah, in
He's
fairness,
probably
both Lee and Lewis have unbelievable knockout power.
Yeah,
so.
like I wouldn't. Yeah. Don't be,
What, that gun fired? And
Don't be
yeah.
silly.
Crazy, yeah.
It's sore.
Yeah, let's move her on and have a little bit of, and then obviously fight talk back in your life. So welcome back to obviously Fight Talk, and if you're watching on YouTube you can see, and if you're listening on audio you're about to find out, we are now joined by SiriusXM MMA Fighting and MMA Beat. Luke Thomas, welcome along to obviously Fight Talk.
How are you guys doing? Thank you so much for having me.
Cheers for coming on, man.
Yeah, great having you on. Luke, what we're going to do is we're going to hit a couple of the big stories the last week or so, just have a general open discussion about them, really. So no prizes for guessing on an Irish podcast. First topic is Conor McGregor says legitimising the title takes priority over money fights. So where does he go next? What's your thoughts? I don't know if you've seen Conor had a Q&A in Glasgow, Scotland over the past weekend, where he sort of gave so many options of what he could do
gave
next.
Himself a lot of options, yeah.
He's only short of fielding for the Boston Red Sox with the amounts of options he gave. But what do you think should happen next for Conor, and then what you think will actually happen next with Conor McGregor?
Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't see all of the Q&A. I read some of it. I was on, first as a matter of disclosure, I was on vacation the last 2 weeks, so I spent yesterday and then this morning trying to catch up on everything that I had missed, although I had paid attention a little bit while I was gone. But yeah, what should happen, what will happen? I don't know. Okay, what will happen, I think the betting money, so to speak, is probably going to be on some kind of Nate Diaz trilogy, which I have, I wouldn't say no interest in. I have a lot of interest in seeing Nate Diaz fight. I have a lot of interest in seeing Conor McGregor fight, but I don't know. I mean, I really appreciate McGregor saying that a certain legitimization needs to happen for that title. I mean, you just sort of look around the divisions. I mean, the welterweight division has had some boring fights, but Tyron Woodley's at least fighting those top contenders, and there's something to be said for that. Particularly up in middleweight, it's been a bit of a mess. God knows what's going to happen at light heavyweight. Heavyweight, you've got Stipe up there, but you've got this unresolved issue with Kane going on. And that's not the same thing as guys not fighting who they're supposed to be fighting, but just sort of the divisions aren't moving in ways that they could, or perhaps in some cases should. And here you have a lightweight down, an opportunity to do everything the right way. Right? You've got a guy, Conor McGregor, who's going to take some time, come back, and be ready to go. And then you've got this Lee versus Ferguson contest in just a week, where you're going to get the ostensible number one contender. And I think certainly if Tony Ferguson wins, I mean, his resume at that point is so overwhelmingly meritocratic that you couldn't ignore him. I think that's the way you should go. Whether they will go that in an era, or I should not say an era, but certainly a year where that's down, where business is not great, where you could make substantial revenue of Nate Diaz, it's such a wild card that it's really hard to know. But I just have to say I really, really appreciate Conor McGregor saying things like, having a title and then using it to make money is what we say champions do. That's why Amanda Nunes canceled that Valentina Shevchenko fight. Yeah. But to have the courage to say, you have a title, it's a responsibility. It's a responsibility. And to acknowledge that responsibility when, frankly, he doesn't have to, I really admire.
One thing I took from the Q&A was that Conor specifically mentioned the Kevin Lee and Ferguson fight, which, you know, obviously it's the big fight that's happening, it's for an interim title, but generally Conor doesn't really bring up specific guys or specific fights unless it's something he is looking at. Do you think that his comment saying, you know, I'm going to have my eyes on this fight is really throwing down the gauntlet to these two guys to go out there, put on a performance and get his attention?
Could be. I don't think he needs to for those guys to go out there and do that. I mean, whatever you think about Tony Ferguson, the guy's an animal, right? And Kevin Lee ain't kind of cut from the same cloth. I've interviewed these guys a number of times in person, man. It's intense. There's a lot of fighters you interview, and it's just sort of like interviewing another guy off the street. And sometimes you interview fighters, man, and there's a certain... They radiate a certain something, and both of those guys have that. So I don't think they need to have the whip cracked on them in that sense. But certainly it's good for the UFC that he said that, right, to connect himself to that contest. And otherwise, yes, it's for the lightweight title, so there's this connectivity no matter what, or the interim lightweight title, I should say. But I mean, for him to vocalize that, I think is really, really powerful. So that's good. But I don't know that I see any kind of that he needs to be a catalyst for action or for them to really sort of kick it into high gear. Those guys are, man, they're piss and vinegar 100%. So no.
It's one of the biggest marks on Conor's card by a lot of people, haters, or even not even haters, people, fans. They
maybe
even
said realists. Some would say
he's never defended a belt. So for his career, like if Conor, for example, let's say he went on, he fought George St. Pierre's, which is being touted around, and never defended his belt, what would that mean to his legacy in MMA?
I do think it would hurt him. I do think it would hurt him. Now, how much would be a matter of debate. It depends to what heights he soars to and who all he beats and how often he fights. I mean, there's a lot of complicating factors here, so it's hard to say with any kind of certainty. But for sure, man, there was this big debate in MMA for a while, and I firmly stand on one side of it. It's not to say that what Conor McGregor has done is not impressive. I mean, that would be insane, right? What he's done has been incredibly impressive. Take out the promotional side of it. In other words, just go to Wikipedia and look at his resume and look at the guys he's beat. This is an incredible accomplishment, right? And getting revenge on the one guy and doing it outside of his weight class, and it's amazing. But to jump around and take challenges is incredibly difficult to do. I wonder, I can't say for any certainty, but I wonder if that's as difficult as, not necessarily what Mighty Mouse has done, because it's such a different weight class, and I give all the credit to Mighty Mouse for what he's done. But here's what I mean. What's harder? Jumping around taking challenges, some of which cases maybe stylistically advantaged, some ways maybe not, or taking a belt or standing a post and letting wave after a wave of contender try and take that from you, because you're going to be sick one days when they're going to be strong, and you're going to not feel it some days when they are, and that's the biggest night of their life, and maybe it's not the biggest night of yours. It's very, 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 very difficult to do that. And you can say, well, Mayweather did it, but Mayweather did it by getting, especially in the latter chapter of his career, getting a lot of guys off prime. His last fight was against an MMA fighter who jumped over to boxing, an incredibly difficult task for somebody to do. So, look, I'm not saying that that McGregor's going to lose his next fight if it's a title defense. He may go in there and beat the. Can I curse on this?
You can.
Right? He might run over them. But I will say, if you have an entire career where you don't have any title defenses, you got to remember these guys, when they're number one contenders, especially fighting a guy like Conor McGregor, they're going to rise to the occasion in ways they often haven't. Yes, Eddie Alvarez kind of collapsed, but that's not going to be the case every time. These guys are going to overperform, and the best fighters, look at the guys who are in their primes, Silva and Fedor, right? These guys did get pushed. They got pushed to the brink, but what made them champions, let's say Fedor in the Fujita fight, or pick any Silva fight where he got pushed to the brink, the first Sonnen fight, was that they overcame it. I do think McGregor, if he fights one of these guys, is going to get pushed to the brink, but the question is, can he overcome that? And answering those kinds of challenges, I do think is very important for your legacy.
One thing I was thinking about, basically for McGregor's next moves, because of the whole boxing thing, was how big of a roadblock or blocker would be the whole McGregor promotions thing be for the UFC to get him back in there? Because this is one thing that he's talked about for a long time, probably since he's got to the UFC. He's been dropping these hints. He wants his own promotional thing, and he's got that with the boxing. Can the UFC work with McGregor in a business sense like that with another promotional body? Because historically we know that they never done that.
I think they can, and then in fact you can look at the Mayweather-McGregor fight itself, or you can look at Mayweather versus Canelo. Like, okay, so you had McGregor Sports and Entertainment, right? Forgive me, because I'm still on vacation mode here a little bit. And you had that all over the step and repeats everywhere you went. And I'm not saying that McGregor doesn't handle his own business, or that his people like Audie Attar are, asleep at the wheel. These are very engaged, proactive, smart, accomplished people. But realistically, in terms of promoting the event, I don't mean McGregor's personal effort. I mean McGregor Sports Entertainment. What did they do? I don't know the answer to that, because I can tell you on the promotion side, in terms of media, it was you are dealing almost exclusively with Floyd's people, right? Floyd's people did almost everything. You can go back to the Mayweather versus Canelo bout. What did Canelo has a promotional company too. I think it's called Canelo Promotions or something like that. What did he do to promote that contest? Again, outside of his own personal conduct, nothing. Yeah. But what he did was he set up this company, he set up this organization that said, if you want my participation, you have to pay me at a certain rate above what I would get as a fighter. In other words, maybe UFC says, look, we have to retain control of our product. But if you want fighter checks and promoter checks, we can work out some kind of arrangement like that. And I honestly think in the end, that probably would be some kind of amicable solution. Now, obviously, you have to ask Dana White if his opinion is the same. But in other words, I don't think that the organization, McGregor Sports Entertainment, is a nothing organization. But what I do think is if you can get if you can get McGregor paid in two ways, I don't know that it's so big or so small that it's some kind of relevant factor. They had to be involved operationally.
I know at the end of the day the cage door gets closed and it's you against him, but there's a picture, I'm not too sure what website it was on, but so forgive me for that, but there was a picture of Tony Ferguson and Kevin Lee standing off, and Dana White is separating them while wearing a McGregor Boxing Club t-shirt. So when you're Kevin Lee and Tony Ferguson and you're fighting for the interim title and your promoter is wearing the t-shirt of the champion, that's gotta that's gotta be something to the fighters.
Well, it was interesting. That was if I'm not mistaken, that was the Thursday of fight week for Mayweather McGregor. Yeah. And that was, I think, on the campus of the UFC Performance Institute, although I might be wrong about that. But I remember Dana White had a McGregor shirt on that Tuesday when I went to the Ultimate Fighter House for the Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series. They got to find a smaller name for that.
Yeah.
And what he said was, this is when the John Jones news broke. Someone asked him, you got a McGregor shirt on? He's like, I'm gonna wear one every day this week for good luck. That's what he said. So there's partly something to that, like he was just wearing it for good luck. But to your point, the optics of it, right, is just a photo or a video. It feels kind of weird, but I think that's okay. Look, Conor McGregor's unlike any other fighter maybe we've seen in mixed martial arts. And people who are successful and people who have raised themselves to certain levels, whether it's by effort or by luck or by a combination of both, and I think in the case of McGregor, it's certainly a combination of both, a lot of hard work as well, you're going to get treated differently. It's just the reality. The guy has got to a level in the game where he has a promotional company with his name on it. And to your point to the previous question, the UFC might have to start dealing with it. Tough shit. I don't know what to say to the fighters. Like, he got that himself. So if they feel like that he's being treated differently in a certain way, the answer is he probably is. The difference is, A, what are you going to do about it? And B, if you don't like it, find some way to fix it, because this is the world we live in.
One fighter who's trying to do that is Bless Max Holloway has basically said that Conor McGregor's holding on to a fairy tale. The fact that he still calls himself the two-weight champion, hints at a move to lightweight to have that rematch with Conor. Me personally, if I could handpick a fight, that's the fight I want to see. I was torn. Just my patriotic Irish blood had me on Conor's side in the first fight. I'm a big Holloway fan, but I think the rematch, like, for me, it is a more legitimate rematch at this time than Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz hasn't fought since he lost to Conor. So do you ever see that fight even happening down the line, Max Holloway, or unfortunately has that boat sailed and that rematch is only a dream?
I'm with you completely. I don't think it's the imminent one, right? Because he is the featherweight champ and he's got his own issues to handle with Frankie Edgar before anything else goes down. But I'm with you. I mean, and look, everyone's like, Max Holloway is so different now, and he is. I'm like, I could not have higher praise for Max Holloway, both as a champion and as a guy who has just really committed to his craft. But you can say the same thing about Conor McGregor. Look how much better he is now. Look at some of the weapons he added in that Mayweather fight. This is a guy who did not operate mixed martial arts with a jab. All of a sudden there's one, So and of course he had the ACL injury in the course of that contest, and it was a 3-round contest. I mean, and it was at 145. So like, there's just so many reasons to think from a fight fan's standpoint, a real fight fan standpoint, that fight not only would be different, would be exciting in ways both predictable and totally unpredictable. And to have it at 5 rounds at a bigger weight class when both guys have a lot more weapons, a lot more firepower, and just a lot more experience, it's everything you could possibly want. Which isn't to say the Tony Ferguson fight or Khabib fight or Kevin Lee fight couldn't deliver those necessarily, but I think your question is on paper, it just seems so much more tantalizing, and I co-sign on that 100%.
It also has a good story as well, because you have the injury with McGregor. Max Holloway said he was injured. Holloway went on to win the title in the division as well. So you have that story there, and we know McGregor loves the stories as well. So it's a phenomenal fight as well. Yeah.
One fighter moving away from Conor who's looking for a resurgence in his career, moving camp, is Johny Hendricks. Is joining up at Jackson Wink for his UFC 217 training camp. Do we see this as, like, Johny Hendricks has been on a bit of a slump? He's moved up in weight because of the weight issues. He's 1-on-1 at the new weight class, and he missed weight. Yeah. Do we see this as a good move for Hendricks, former champion?
Hard to see how it's a bad one. Yeah. Look, a couple of reasons. It's not that Johny Hendricks had bad coaches around him. It's not that even bad coaches. Even if he did, everyone's like, if you've got good coaches, why leave them? There's lots of reasons to leave good coaches. Maybe the chemistry's not there. Maybe something bad happened between you. Maybe you just need a fresh look. There's all kinds of reasons to say, even if you had great coaching staff, finding another good coaching staff could perhaps reinvent you or give you something new or refresh you or whatever the circumstances may be. So, like, for example, he's got he had a striking coach in Stephen Wright, who I've tried to feature as often as I could. Yeah. He has his own gym now. He was the head striking coach at Team Takedown. Now he's at his own place called the War Room MMA. And I've got some additional coverage coming out about it. I mean, this guy is, easily one of the best striking coaches in MMA. A brilliant mind when it comes to it. That guy's not a good coach. The guy's an amazing coach. But maybe Johnny just needs a different look. And the reality is, if you go to Jackson Wink, they've shown historically they can either A, turn a career around in certain cases, or B, if a guy is older, either through mileage or literal numeric age, perhaps reinvent their game or retool it just a little bit to make it more accommodating of their present physical condition. And that's something Johny Hendricks could use. Now, the question is, will it work? I guess we'll have to see, but it's very, very difficult for me to look at this and say this is some kind of a bad idea. An automatic solution, I don't know, but hardly foolish.
What's your thoughts on Johny Hendricks at middleweight?
I don't like it. Yeah. I think it sucks. It's clearly not the best weight class for him. It's a function of the fact that he has had, so many issues making weight and has done such insane damage to his body through weight cutting, and God knows. The guy's been weight cutting since he was a teen or before. American wrestling starts at like 7-8 years old. Or some cases before that. So you just have to consider how long. Now there's less weight cutting obviously when you're a toddler, but you get the idea. From a pretty early age, this guy's been ravaging him. I know there's obviously, I've asked him explicitly about the USADA arguments. You had punching power, they came along, now you don't. What do you make of that? He has his own answers about it. But 185 is so clearly ill-suited for him, and it's only there because it's the only option for him. You can't make the specified weight in the weight class that would be good for you competitively. The next option is 15 pounds up. You're completely fucked at that point.
This is something that they were trying to do as well. They've brought in some new changes in cutting weight, that you have to be a certain percentage, fight week and stuff like that. It doesn't, even the early weigh-ins. At first it looked like the early weigh-ins where fighters could turn up and weigh in that little bit earlier, that they didn't have to wait till the afternoon show. It doesn't seem to have helped. And it seems like more fighters are missing weight over the last few shows. And it's almost as well... I don't know, I have my own theory that a lot of fights fall out because fighters are struggling with the weight cut as well, and they know they're nowhere near weight class, so, I'm injured, I can't fight. But just what is the solution with weight? Should fighters be made fight at a more natural weight class to eliminate this crazy cut? Because even like the Mayweather, just to throw briefly to that, not to go into the Mayweather camp, I love everybody's face when Conor stepped on the scales, because he knew he was 168 a couple of days previous, and he had the biggest smile on his face because he thought there's no way Conor's making weight. And then when he calls the weight, what? And he was shocked. So that's something that is, to MMA fighters, they cut a huge amount of weight. Should we be addressing that and looking at something in the long run to allow fighters fight at their more natural weight?
And Conor gassed in that fight. He keeps asking himself, what's going wrong? Yeah. Maybe some guys can cut a lot of weight. I know fighters who can cut a lot of weight and not have a performance drop-off. Maybe he's not one of those guys, Now, he obviously had some gassing at 170 when he fought up there, so this could be a bigger issue. I'm simply pointing out, to your point, we cut a lot of weight without asking ourselves really specifically to me, not the general macro view, but to me, to you, to him, what are the actual effects of weight cutting on my performance? I wonder if he's ever had that measured in some kind of way. But I really think that California has the best answer, which is to make this a medical issue of supervision. It's not a fighter issue of supervision. It's not a coach. It's not a trainer. It's not even really a dietitian. It's a medical one, which is to say, over the course of some regulatory period, we're going to, at various intervals, find ways to measure and regulate this. So both A, test you to see how hydrated you are, and B, beyond just testing you, find a way to make sure we deter you from going too far. But if you don't adhere to these protocols, we might still let you compete, but then at the next interval, bump you up. And really, in other words, really have a humane approach, but a consistent, vigilant approach that is a medically supervised one from soup to nuts. Without that, I don't really know what you can do. And folks have asked, well, why can't Nevada do that, or New Jersey do that? Or let's take I don't know how much you guys know about American geography, but you take some states that don't have fights as often, let's say Tennessee, a southern state, or even Indiana, somewhere in the Midwest. Why can't commissions there do something about it? You have to understand the very specific nature of California. First of all, it's the world's, fifth largest economy by itself. It's a giant state with a huge amount of people. They have so many shows, from boxing into mixed martial arts, so many of them, discounting Bellator, discounting UFC. They have so much revenue coming in, they're able to create this much larger apparatus at the commission. The commission has many more people involved. They're able to do a lot more things from a resource standpoint, both human and financial. So they don't need Bellator to come to the state, and they don't need UFC to come to the state to still get the general amount of revenue to keep things going, which is why they have CAMO, this sort of regulatory framework for amateur, and why they can impose these sanctions on promoters, not sanctions, but these rules, I should say, on promoters for weight cutting, because they have the ability to do it and they don't need the big players. The rest of the states need the big players, and even if they did need the big players, they don't have the resources to be able to enact those kinds of programs. So you're asking me how this is going to get solved. California's got a pretty great system, but that's not a system you can replicate at scale very easily.
What I remember with Nevada, a lot of the time when they brought in new rules and the bigger commissions, all the other commissions would move towards it. Is that still the case? Like, if Nevada makes a big change in rules, or in say weight cutting, or if California does it as well, do a lot of those other commissions move towards it? Not necessarily the big ones where you need a lot of revenue to actually do it, but if they're making a weight cut procedure, would a lot of the other commissions follow suit still?
You mean if, like, the Association of Boxing Commissions does it, or like if Nevada does it?
Like, say Nevada,
Go ahead.
So, like, if the Nevada commission, say California, had a solution to weight cutting, or maybe not a solution, but an alternative route, and because they're one of the bigger commissions, would other commissions follow suit?
Sure. I mean, there is some sort of reciprocal or mirroring of Nevada regulatory code in other commissions, especially if it just makes it easy, right? Yeah. Remember, these guys don't have nearly as much experience and don't get nearly as much work, so they have to make things kinds of easy for themselves. And they might say to themselves, well, if Nevada can do it, we'll just take what they do and we'll just make it here, because, number one, a promoter might be used to that, and two, if Nevada's doing it wrong, who's doing it right? That's sort of the general view. I will say, though, that you're seeing a lot more splintering among bigger commissions in terms of procedure, which I don't think is a very good thing. I mean, on the one hand, you would want a commissioner to say, or some member of some advisory board, if it's New Jersey, let's say, you would want them to say, well, we don't agree, we're not going to follow that because we have to follow our conscience, we have to follow our medical best practices, right? That seems intuitively like a good thing. But it ends up creating a lot of confusion for promoters, for fighters, for trainers, for coaches. Oh, I've got, remember these coaches, they fly all over the country or the world sometimes in the course of like 6 weeks. So they're like in Nevada 1 week with one fighter, they're in New Jersey the next week for another fighter, and they're trying to follow everything that's happening along. Some are in the UFC, some are on the regional level. And so that splintering has, I think, created some headaches. In the case of California, what they're doing seems so medically sound that there's not a lot of pushback from it, but you've noticed no one else has followed suit, either for the reasons I mentioned or for other ones. So I think you do see some of that for like, hey, we're going to have some fights in, I don't know, making something up here, Oregon. But I do think some of the bigger questions for some of those major and mid-major commissions, you're seeing a little bit of splintering now.
A couple of points we want to touch on, just the different stories, just before we let you go as well, Luke, is Rory McDonald's comments about his disappointment with Bellator an early signal to set the alarm bells off for Bellator to worry about the longevity of McDonald with the promotion?
No, I don't think so. Here's what I think is happening with these guys. It's, okay, if you've had a bad problem with a promoter, right, some kind of disagreement with them, some kind of real substantive disagreement, to the point where you've left a promoter, right? So you were with UFC and now you're with Bellator, right? What lesson do you ultimately draw from that? Do you draw from that the circumstances by which you had disagreements with promoter A, they're so unique to promoter A that you should go all in with promoter B? Maybe, but my sense of things is that, yes, they chose to go from, in this case, UFC to Bellator because they liked Scott Coker, and there was just some unique circumstances that made it better for him, and maybe he does feel like in many ways, substantively, he's going to be treated better. But I also think that these end up being wake-up calls for fighters, where you're still dealing with promoters. Yeah. Doesn't matter if it's this one or it's that one. They have separate interests from you. You need to have your own interest and realize it doesn't matter if you change promotions. You don't go from being a flag waver in the UFC to a flag waver in Bellator. Take the lessons about things that soured with you in UFC and realize some of them still might exist at Bellator. You don't need to be the promoter's best friend. You need to look out for yourself. And by the way, that's true the other way around too. Guys who had sour dealings with Bellator, I do not recommend you go to UFC and say, yes, the UFC is my best friend. In some ways they might be. In some ways they're still a promoter. You need to make sure that your interests are the ones you care about the most. So it's less about changing alliances and realizing that you're still dealing with just a different form of the same kind of entity. A colleague, Ariel
Helwani, had Ronda Rousey's head coach Edmund on, and he said the fight he would like to see is Ronda against Cyborg. So is he just looking to scream head movement again, or do you think this is just the craziest thing you've ever heard?
Oh, I've heard some crazy things. This is certainly. I saw that when I was on vacation. I was just like, "Wow, poor Edmund."
Thank God I left.
I mean, he must have some kind of debt or something. I mean, fellow Paul Gift for that, because he sort of followed the bankruptcy proceedings. I don't really know what his situation is, but what a totally insane thing to suggest. Totally out of left field. Bizarre would be a very charitable way to describe it, other than whatever kind of benefit it would confer upon him. I mean, you can't be. I mean, Amanda Nunes versus Cris Cyborg, you would say, tough fight, but I probably favor Cris Cyborg in that one. And Amanda Nunes absolutely just blitzed her in 45 seconds. Whatever circumstances that Ronda apparently has now after the fact, or she's claiming now after the fact, or Edmund is claiming for her after the fact. I should be fair to Ronda. It's almost unethical to book that fight, right? It's almost unethical. So that's I don't have words beyond what I've already said.
Speaking of sort of bad ideas and freak shows in so many ways, and I mean this in a respectful way, because probably one of the reasons why I am an MMA fan and I watch so much and involve myself with this show, follow guys like yourself. There's a rumour of Chuck Liddell possibly fighting in Bellator. Is that something you want to see, or please stop?
On a sour note?
Well, it's Chuck.
Wait. What does that mean? It's Chuck.
Well, I love Chuck. Like me personally, no way I want to see this. And I honestly think the person who won out of all this news was, again, another colleague of yours, Chuck Mendenhall, when Chael Sonnen said Chuck anytime, and Chuck said, yeah, where you want to go? That brilliant tweet by Chuck Mendenhall, absolutely fantastic. But surely, no, we do not want to see Chuck Liddell strapping on the 4-ounce gloves again.
Oh, God. I mean,
it's the era, though, isn't it, that we're in at these old timers coming back?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is getting ghoulish. Yeah. I did see news when I was out. That that I believe a Boston University, I don't want to say like Boston University, but a university in Boston, although it could be Boston University, has developed early technology that still needs to be tested, but may be able to detect CTE in living patients, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which of course is the things that NFL football players get. I believe rugby players get them as well. Yeah. Even soccer players have gotten them to an extent. It's sort of this degenerative brain condition through trauma. And heretofore, you can only detect it in the deceased. And not only that, you can only detect it in the deceased of the families who donate the brains, right? So even getting access to a reasonable sample size can be difficult. Here's my point. My point being is, can you reasonably rely on promoters to not book ghoulish fights? No, you cannot. Can you reasonably rely on athletic commissions to not allow ghoulish bouts to go forward? No, you cannot. But I wonder if some point in the future, if we did have a test and some kind of threshold for saying this is the because we put laws around fighting, we put codes and regulations around fighting. There are certain things we allow for in terms of damage, and there are certain things we don't allow for. There are certain things we screen ahead of time, and certain things that we say as a consequence you can't compete. I wonder if in the future, and this I think actually would help settle the PED debate in a different way. If you have enough brain damage, measurable brain damage, and I don't know that Chuck has any, but I think it's a reasonable conclusion to say he probably has some, that you're not eligible to get a fighter's license anymore, anywhere. And I think that would solve the problem, because as long as commissions might sanction this, and as long as promoters might put it on, what can you do except express dismay?
One thing I found interesting, and maybe kind of helps with it, but Scott Coker said that Chuck would have to go through a lot of tests. But as you said, what kind of pre-fight medical could Chuck Liddell go through to really, to see how he is? Like, if we don't have the actual science behind it, what can he do as a basic pre-fight medical?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, remember certain scans, whether it was a CT scan or an MRI scan, caught something in Rashad Evans that spooked the New York Commission. So I don't think that current technology is utterly worthless, but like any test for measuring heart health or cardiovascular health or blood pressure, these readings are all really incomplete and may mean one thing and it may not mean another. Better question for a doctor, but I would just say certainly we could all agree that I think any medical expert will tell you that existing technology around head trauma is limited to what is observable to the naked eye, which is to say, I went to that Cleveland Clinic press conference here in D.C. The UFC was part of it initially, then it just became Viacom, Bellator, and a couple of boxing promoters. I interviewed Paulie Malignaggi in that. This was like 2015. I encourage Irish fans to go find it on the MMA Fighting website. Go back and watch it. Paulie could not say more nice things about Conor McGregor. I went back and watched it. It is shocking.
You have to check that out.
It was right after the first Nate Diaz fight, and Paulie's whole point was, you go back and watch that fight. You tell me who the more talented guy is.
Oh well.
And he was talking about McGregor striking, and it's sort of a bizarro world. Anyway,
we're gonna have to share that.
The point being is, I talked to one of the doctors who was at that event. And his answer, I was asking about certain tests they were doing, and some are some sort of, brain imaging scans, but other ones are like memory recall. What can you draw? What kind of coordination do you have with your hands? These are things observable to the naked eye, less so about what's happening in the brain. And so that's all I really know.
My thing, I think the test for Chuck should literally be just look at his last 3 fights. You hung them up for a reason, Chuck. Stay the legend you are in our minds. I don't want to see that happen again. Bit of a sour note to end on, but I have to say, Lou, it has been an absolute pleasure to chat with you. Just talk a few topics. Give a shout out to if people aren't following you and are MMA fans, I don't know why they're not. But where can people find you on social media?
Social media, I'm at L Thomas News on Twitter, and then on Instagram and Facebook it's the same thing. It's just Luke Thomas News, full on. That should do the trick.
When's the show back? When's the Luke Thomas show back?
Today. In an hour and a half.
Oh wow!
I'm back on SiriusXM. Yes, I'm very excited. Today is actually the last day of my current contract.
Oh.
I have yet to sign a new one, although I'm told they're sending one. So
test the free agency.
I should be fine. But it comes back today. And then, of course, continues throughout the week. And then if you can't get SiriusXM, which I know the Irish can't, unfortunately, I still do all the podcasts on MMA fighting. And I've got and I've got some cool stuff in the works, so stay tuned.
We'll send you a contract offer over fax after this.
For this, yeah. We'll get you on, obviously, Fight Talk. Absolute pleasure. Keep up the great work, and I look forward to the return of the Monday analysts as well. I love all that. Love your breakdowns, looking back at the fights as well. But again, look, thanks a million for taking the time coming on to us today.
Thanks, boys. Really appreciate it.
Cheers. Take care. Bye. There you are, ladies and gentlemen. Luke Thomas, one of the best in the business. It's simple to say. So far in MMA fighting, we've had Luke Thomas, Chuck Minhall. Who are we missing? We're missing somebody. Esther Lynn. Yeah. So I don't know. But yeah, absolute pleasure talking to Luke Thomas there. Great points. I loved that. It was such an open chat.
I'm not going to rush you, but I'm going to kind of rush you, because if anybody has like laser vision,
or
not laser vision, super vision. What laser vision? You're seeing Tom Duquesnoy just text me and said ready to go, so we better not keep him off.
So I'm not keeping Tom Duquesnoy waiting. So welcome to obviously Fight Talk, Tom Duquesnoy. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to obviously Fight Talk, and we are delighted to say we are joined by the Fire Kid, the explosive, the exciting. When you watch this guy fight, you've seen world class. We are joined by Tom Duquesnoy.
Hey guys, thanks for welcoming.
Tom, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. We've been lucky enough to watch you fight on a few occasions in Bama. Yeah. And you're fighting this weekend at UFC 216. So firstly, how was camp in Albuquerque?
As usual, perfect. Surrounded by good sparring partners that helped you to reach the best level without injuring you. And at the same time, I am able to bring my French coach here, so the man of shadow, Bourama Traoré, who is with me from the very beginning of Bama. Also, Michel Gillot, who is my physical preparator. And also still having benefits from the amazing coach here, Greg Jackson, Mike Whipple-Jones, Rafael Freitas for BJJ, and also my coach of wrestling, Lenny Loveiro.
It's a serious lineup of coaches, and when we spoke to you last in Dublin, Man of Shadow Torre was with you on the night. That's for us, when we seen you defend against Alan Philpott was the last fight, but you've now obviously you've moved with the UFC. You put off UFC offers previously before that to gain experience. So do you find, I think it was when you were 19 years of age, you were offered a contract first with the UFC. Are you seeing the fruits of your labour, as in staying with Bama, becoming a multiple champion? Has that experience made your transition to the UFC easier?
Yeah, thanks to Bama, I had the opportunity to fight against very high-level opponents in all the fields of the combat, on the ground, wrestlers and strikers. So it helped me to be at my best level to reach UFC as soon as I was feeling the most complete possible. So the UFC reached me at the age of 19, and I signed at the age of 23. So we were having a good relationship, and knowing what was the best time for me to get into the UFC octagon. So at the age of 23, after my last contract with Bama, I felt that was definitely the good time. So I did it.
As Noel said, we got to see a lot over here. You fought in Ireland a couple of times, and obviously you fought in the UK as well with Bama. Cody Stamman, he said that he wasn't impressed with your lead up to the UFC. He wasn't impressed with the opponents that you fought. We obviously saw the opponents. You took on all comers. You beat some really good guys. But what do you say to that when he says that you haven't fought anybody that good?
Well, it's the kind of mental setting that doesn't speak to me a lot. You know, when he knows, I definitely know he's a very high level opponent, and I am a very high level opponent too. And I beat, and I've been crossing swords with very high level competitors in all the fields of the combat. And that was in Ireland, I was in England, and you guys know that the Dubliners or the Irish or the English are amazing fighters, and we have in Europe we have one of the best level, especially with the McGregor era right now. So I'm not, when you get into a fight and you don't really know what to say, you just say to discredit your opponent and saying that at the end of the day you beat nobody. But it's just because maybe on the moment he didn't have any idea what to say. But I respect Cody for what he did, and I'm deeply sure he respects what I did, and I fought against a very high level opponent. That's a fact.
The fact that you fought here on a few occasions now, Tom, I'm not too sure if you're aware, but you're now adopted Irish. So, you're one of us now, and you have a big following here. I know, for example, your UFC debut, I had people constantly messaging me saying, what time is Tom Duquesnoy on? Did you find that with your high level of experience, you defended your belt numerous times with Bama, you were a two-weight champion, but when you made your UFC debut, there's a theory that Joe Rogan would always point to, saying UFC jitters, as in it's more nerve-wracking to fight in the UFC octagon. Did you experience that? Was it a little more nerve-wracking stepping into the UFC, or was it just another night's work under the bright lights for Tom Duquesnoy?
I was waiting, having way more pressure for the last fight, and actually, UFC is a big industry. Everything is so professional. The fight week is so fluent. Everything is smooth. Everything is professional. So, in order for fighters get the best performance during the night, and that's exactly what happened. I was way more stressed, or way more relaxed, I should say, than usually when I fight in the US or in Ireland, because the organization is so smooth, and because everything is made for performance.
With the fight on such a big card, and you're high up on the card, you're the main event of the Fight Pass. So there's going to be a huge number of eyes. Again, you have fought on BAM, the biggest show in Europe, but does that add more pressure to you as well? Is that something you think about when you're in there? You have, like I said, you're basically adopted Irish now, so a lot of Irish people will be watching you, but the pressure of the eyes, does that add to it as well, or is that not something you think about when you step in there?
No, actually, it's I would lie to you guys if I would tell you that it's not anxious at all to be the main event of the prelims. It is, but it's also all positive for me, because it's a new step for my career. It's a new opportunity for me to mark my brand, to mark the spirits with my performance, thanks to my training I had upstream. So everything is just positivity and just a good news for the rest of my career. So I'm more in a mood where I enjoy every day till the fight, and also after, than to be stressed or overwhelmed. I am aware of the pressure. I am aware that a lot of stuff are overwhelming right now, but every step is delicious,
What's the support back home in France, Tom? Because MMA still is illegal. It's not recognised in France, but I'm sure there is still a huge following in France for you. So how tough? The double-wed question really. What's the support like back home? But how tough was it as well growing up in France? I read an article where you used to get DVDs of UFC and Pride, and you were fascinated by it. But how difficult was it coming up in France, where it is an illegal sport?
It's for me, that was actually something that motivates me even more and develops me even more, because we are speaking English right now. And if MMA would have been legal in France and doing all of my previous fights in France, I would speak maybe just French. It's not the best for the business, because, as you know, the bigger part of the MMA is on the west coast of the USA, and in order to develop in that business, you need to speak in English. So just for that simple fact, it is a good thing that I've been abroad my whole life, and developing my career in beautiful countries like Ireland, that always promotes me very well and supporting me, respecting, and England as well. It helped me for sure. It helped me a lot, being aware that even if people they will be supporting your opponent most of the fights, at the end of the fight, when your arm is standing up, they're just standing for you and applauding you, and that's one of the best images of the sport.
One thing I find really interesting about you is the way, and you mentioned it here, the way you build your brand. It's not just the fight game. Like, you took your time to get to the UFC because you know that you were investing in your talents. And then also outside the cage, you have the modelling, which a lot of people know about, and you have other things as well. How important is it for you not just to take any fight and be a fighter, but to actually build your brand. So once the fight game ends, or even, you know, right now, that you have something else, not just the fights.
Exactly, that is the idea. You know, you are on the top of your game for maybe 10 to 15 years, and then you have to adapt and do something else. And nobody makes, not a lot of people does a lot of millions thanks to their fighting career. So you have to help your career in doing something else. And modeling is one of the fields I am developing and I'm working on since a few years right now. There is also acting that I plan for the next years too. And you know, developing your brand, but developing your social media, representing brands, not only MMA brands but others that could need you for their development. I think it's definitely one of the things I want to develop in order to make sure to have a safe future. You know, because we are not sure that tomorrow I won't break my knee. We never know, and in that sport there is no retirement, so you have to manage all the possibilities.
Probably a weird question, but how do you balance modelling with fighting? Because they seem like two completely different things. Like one, you're getting punched in the face, and the other one, I'm guessing they don't want you to be punched in the face. So how do you balance that? Yeah,
hopefully I develop a style where I take less. But, you know, for the moment, you know, with the makeup you can hide the little things you have on your face, but. No, I'm going to do... No, let's see. I'm trying to not to be injured, not to be, broken face, so I can still work outside of it. So yeah, I have to manage that. Yeah, it's a good remark. Yeah.
Just speaking about the acting, one thing you do in the cage after victory as well, very Jean-Claude Van Damme, like you do the splits through victory as well. Is that somebody that, looking at acting, somebody that you would like to mirror in his style, that some of the fights and fight movies he was in, is that something, that style of movie, or is it something different you'd be looking at?
For me, life is a huge open theater. You know, a lot of I have a few friends in France that they told me I look like Jean-Paul Belmondo, which is one of the greatest actors of his generations by the 50s, 70s, and also a lot of people see in me the next Jean-Claude Van Damme, because the splits, the fact that we used to live in the north of France. Him, that was more in Belgium, that's kind of the same. Going through Paris for a few years, then trying to live the American dream on the West Coast. So it's a little bit the same process in our life. So I'm sure one day I'm going to meet him, and he has a lot of stuff to teach me, because he went there before me. So acting is definitely one of the things I want to develop in my career. It's very interesting.
Jean-Claude Van Damme, known as the Muscles from Brussels, the Fire Kid, and one name touted around as well now is the Crown Prince of Violence. Where did the Fire Kid come from? Where did that originate from? The nickname?
That was actually the English media, because I fought like maybe 10, 11 times in England, and they found this, you know, they found this one day, and I was like, yeah, it's good. It is also a reference to my first MMA coach, David Baron, that teach me a lot of techniques when I was in Paris. The first time I was in Paris at the age of 18, 19, and so for him, because his name was his nickname was the Fireman. So that's a reference for him too, and also the fact that my style is very explosive, unpredictable, and I cannot hide, especially on a Skype video, that I have still a kid face.
It's one thing that's come into criticism, actually, Tom, surprisingly, is your defensive tactics, that people are saying you are, especially in your UFC debut, is that you do get hit. Is that something that you're working on in Jackson's, because I know you're very aggressive at coming forward. You always seem to take the centre of the octagon or cage. But is defence, is that something that you're working on more, to be elusive in there, be it either footwork or just head movement? Is that something that you're working at in Jackson Wink?
Yeah, this thing has improved. Yeah, technically we've been working a lot on this special topic. So I promise you not taking that much shots for the next fight. But you can say that you have an aggressive style, but you take a lot of shots. It is thanks to this aggressive style that I put knockout and I finish most of my fights. So when you are with someone, when you're a woman, you don't say I like that thing of your personality, but I don't like that thing. You cannot be shopping like this. You're more like, okay, I take you as you are. But definitely and technically, it's something, and I need to improve, and I improved it a lot. And that was something more than my knee, than my elbows, or than my wrestling. Something that I improved during that camp is to try to not taking shots. So moving the head, footwork, analyzing more the distance, and yes, but don't forget, Patrick Williams was a tough opponent. He has the same size than my fifth opponent, but he has like 72 of reach, and my next opponent is like 63, 64. So you imagine having the same size, but at the same time has such a long arm. So it definitely surprised me. And don't forget that maybe the fight looked easy because I make it easy, going forward and giving everything I had. And Patrick Williams was a tough opponent, long arms, an athlete, very explosive. You can watch two fights ago. The way he finished his opponent is explosive. That's the kind of guy you don't want to fight, actually, because it can be a trap so fast and so unpredictable. So we should thank Patrick Williams to have helped me on the fight.
Is that something that you do, Tom? Do you study your previous fights? Do you look back at fights for constant improvement, or do you leave that to your coaches?
No, at every beginning of camp, we all in front of the TV watching my last fights sometime too, and having notes on what I should improve. And then we're looking the next opponent, his different fights, and we see how my strengthness can go into his weaknesses. And at the same time, so it is the game plan. And at the same time, what I have to work more deeply, like on the long term, So we have two programs, and we try to mix the two programs in order to make it better. So you will be the best you can for the next fight, and you will be trying to going step by step for the long-term plan, because I'm not just seeing that fight. What I see is the title. So in order to plan the title, you don't train just for that fight, but you plan for the next shot. So you plan the future.
I know you're not one for calling people out, but assuming you go in here and you finish him or you get the win, what's next for Tom Duquesnoy? Are you looking at a certain opponent specifically, and also outside the cage, what's next for you as well? Because obviously you have a lot going on as well, not just inside the cage.
We will see. There is other very good events in the rest of the year. I would like to fight maybe soon. We will see. It's a question of feeling. We never know what's the results of a fight that didn't happen yet. So for the moment, sorry to not responding you already directly, but focus on the fight. Right after the fight, I will be able to tell you a little bit more.
One of the standout moments, I watch an awful lot of MMA, probably too much, my wife would tell you. But I remember in Birmingham, champion versus champion, wow, where you took on Shea Walsh, and we had a journalist from Flow Combat on with us today, James Lynch, and we basically said to go and look at this finish. That was one of the moments that made me stand up and applaud, where I was just in pure awe of the finish. And you have a habit of doing that to me. It was one of the highlight. I think I tweeted something like, "I've just watched world class." Yeah. It was a stunning finish. It's something I said to you in an interview, and it was one of my favourite things I've ever said in an interview. There's 3 Frenchmen that I love watching. One was Eric Cantona, the other is Paul Pogba, and Tom Duquesnoy. I absolutely... what you do in there, you're an artist to the purest form in combat sport. I cannot wait to watch you on Saturday night do what you do, and we wish you the best of luck on Saturday evening.
Thank you for the support, and I want to thank personally all the Irish audience that have been amazing since my very early fights with Bama. So I fought 2 times over there, and each time that was crowded. Each time I was fighting Irish fighters, and each time they gave me the respect at the end of the fight, and that's at that kind of moment that you can see that what is a real supportive people and people that really respect the high level athletes. So thank you guys for all the stuff.
Tom, thank you very much for your time as well. Fight week, we greatly appreciate it. And like we said, best of luck. And we have you on again when we're leading up or after the bout. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Tom.
Thank you, guys.
Take care. Have a good evening, sir. Take care. Or morning in Albuquerque. Take care. Bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Duquesnoy. And like we said, check out. All his fights are highlights.
Yeah, man. Entertaining. Like Fire Kid, like if you say someone's nickname is the Fire Kid, that just sounds entertaining. It just sounds entertaining, and he is.
But the fight he had with Brendan Loughnane was an incredible fight. Some people screamed, Loughnane was robbed. It was a close fight. It was a very close fight.
It wasn't a robbery, but it was a close fight.
Then the finish of Damien Rooney, that happened. I was emceeing that night, and it happened right in front, like there.
Yeah.
And Damien Rooney, he was a big Irish fighter. Just the finish was sublime. And then Shea Walsh,
there's not many guys at bantamweight that finishes people like Tom does. And we'll see how that translates onto the UFC level. But there's not many guys that finishes his opponents the way Tom does. Like that Damien Rooney one was scary.
Oh,
it was scary. It
Shea
really
Walsh was just. And then you got to give credit. I remember Alan Philpott. I remember we spoke to Alan after that, and he was down, and I was like, Alan, do not be down with that. You just pushed Duquesnoy to the edge. Tom Duquesnoy, and an absolute gent.
Gentleman.
Lovely guy, and we appreciate Fight Week, appreciate the time coming and talking to us here at obviously Fight Talk. But let's move the show on, and you all know it's going to go, and we will be back. Well, Rob, what can you say? This was a show me and you were looking forward to all week. It's something, when we work on the show, Rob, we have guests confirmed, and it could be like Sunday night that we eventually get someone confirmed. This was laid down and nailed down early. I think we were literally going home from recording last week, and we had nearly all these guests confirmed, lined up. So a big shout out, and an A-list lineup. The Fire Kid Tom Duquesnoy, what a chat with him. What a super nice guy. How was he such a trained killer?
I don't know.
He is such a nice guy, an absolute gent.
Yeah,
I love talking with Luke Thomas. Everything and anything we sort of spoke about with Luke Thomas.
I love when we get guys on like Luke Thomas, and I'd put like Brendan Norman in there, where they're really good minds in MMA. Like they know MMA inside and out, and it's always good to talk to people like that.
How we said to Luke Thomas about our idea for what we want to talk to him was, we're like, we do this every week, quick fire news, but we're not going to time you. But what a discussion. It was great talking with Luke Thomas, and James Lynch as well from Flow Combat. Fantastic
UFC
talking
216
to him.
preview.
216 preview. Great stuff. A couple of notables for you folks. This isn't going to be the only stuff released this week from obviously Fight Talk. We have a couple of exclusives. You might have seen, you probably have seen it if you're listening to this now. Big shout out to Richard Kiley, the face of Bama, who takes on Alex Lahore at Bama in the 3 Arena on November the 10th. He was on Facebook Live with us earlier. Big shout out to Richard.
Check it out.
Great stuff if you haven't listened to it. But a couple of exclusives. We are joined, biggest fight of his career. Jimmy Rivera was on, and it worked out great for us, Rob. The sister podcast helped us out. Dave Dominic Cruz, MMA Hour, I think it's called. And we had Jimmy Rivera. It was a great chat, and thanks to Jimmy for taking the time in between training and teaching. And then I'm sure you've all seen it, folks, the crazy video from the UK over the past week. The Walls of Jericho, the Boston Crab. John O'Mears was the man who applied the submission. John came on for an exclusive chat with us. We'll be releasing that during the week. Or
it could be released now, honestly. We don't know when these are going out. I'm going to be honest. They're going out. They'll be there. You'll probably see it.
Rob's got one job. He's just got to edit. But excellent content sent out. Hopefully you enjoy it just as much as me and Rob enjoyed recording it.
So give us a subscribe and a comment and interact, because I always interact.
You do. Sometimes I do. And then you give out because I don't write no at the end of it. Shout out as always to MMAmix.com. Go check them out. They're always sharing their stuff, but they share other great stuff as well. Obviously, because there will obviously Fight Talk. Fight Star Ireland, the fighter's choice, everything you need under 2 roofs. Go and check them out, be it shin pads, groin guards, whatever you need, they've got it. And then to feelsupreme.co.uk. Check them out for all your CBD oils, your supplements. They look after the Chinese teams, they look after average Joe. And hey, get 10% off by using the fight code Fight Talk at the end, at the checkout. That will get you there. Rob, it's been 83, it's been a marathon. We've recorded, if you're looking at the other footage and going, Jesus, Nolan and Robert in the same clothes, we have been here for hours nailing down this show. It's been worth every minute. Thank you to every guest on today, and thank you every listener who's listened to it as well. This has been 83. I look forward to 84.
We're out.
Gadoosh.